The time is precisely 1:15 p.m. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Catherine Pereira and read by Chandima Veerakorn. Headlines. The presidential election will be held within the mandated period. Health services are being carried out without hindrance despite the ongoing strike. Leader of the Ilangai Tamil Arasu Katchi says that they will take the final decision regarding supporting a presidential candidate. A children's hospital and a national hospital will be constructed in Biagama. No breeze, more heat in Sri Lanka. And in news overseas, Biden urges Israel to protect Rafah civilians. Local stories in detail. The presidential election will be held within the mandated period, and according to the current timeline, the general election will be held next year and financial provisions will be provided for the 2025 budget. According to the President's media, the Election Commission is responsible for conducting the elections and the government will be communicating with the Commission as and when required. A collective of 72 health sector trade unions resorted to another strike starting at 6:30 a.m. today. Chairman of the Government Medical Officers Forum, Specialist Dr. Rukshan Bellana says that although some trade unions are engaged in a strike, health services are being carried out with the support of nursing staff without any hindrance. He also stated all nurses have reported for work. He told the SLBC that the government should mediate to stop these strikes. Nearly 800 army officials have been deployed in 31 hospitals to maintain the hospital activities. Leader of the Ilangai Tamil Arasu Katchi parliamentarian Shivanyanam Sridharan says that they will take the decision by the end of this month to set up a political alliance with a presidential candidate at the forthcoming presidential election. Discussions are underway in this regard. He also stated that all decisions will be taken collectively. Parliamentarian C.V. Vigneshwaran said that the present president is the most suitable person among the political leaders. Minister Dr. Bandula Gunawardena says that there is a clear policy decision to set up a network of economic centres island-wide. A board of trustees has been appointed in this regard and provided full police security to the centres. He made these remarks while participating in the Dasa Desin Hatata program of the SLBC. Millions of money is being circulated at the economic centres daily. This news comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
A comprehensive banking services package with a branded checkbook as well as debit and credit card exclusively for you.
Continuing with the local stories, Cabinet approval has been received for the proposal made by the Health Minister and the President to construct a children's hospital and a national hospital in Biagama. Kiribadgoda and Biagama areas have become thickly populated areas. Therefore, the hospital will be constructed considering this matter. Meanwhile, a cabinet approval has been received to construct cooperative trade centres as a cooperative square. Recommendations received for the proposed project have been directed to the National Development Committee. Declining wind flow in some parts of the country have resulted in people in western and Sabragamur and southern provinces feeling the heat more than usual, a spokesman from the Department of Meteorology said yesterday. Deputy Director, Department of Meteorology, Meryl Mendes said that the wind flow in the western province, southern and Sabragamur have declined. Some areas in Sri Lanka are experiencing a declining wind flow. However, the situation in the north and the east is different as there is a fairly heavy wind flow, he said. This is not an unusual phenomenon as this happens during this time of the year. Temperature might increase further during the coming few months and the sun will come directly over Sri Lanka during the first week in April, he added. To conclude the local news, the headlines again. The presidential election will be held within the mandated period. Health services are being carried out without hindrance despite the ongoing strike. Leader of the Ilangai Tamil Arusu Katchi says that they will take the final decision regarding supporting a presidential candidate. A children's hospital and a national hospital will be constructed in Biagama. No breeze, more heat in Sri Lanka. That ends the local news for now.
Elevate your life with People's Bank Excelsior. A comprehensive banking services package with a branded checkbook as well as debit and credit card exclusively for you.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Vedamahatmya.
And on the main news story, media spokesman of prisons Gamini Disanayaka says that the overall number of prison inmates have exceeded 30,000. The number of daily imprisoned persons has also increased to 400. Therefore, he stated that a systematic program has been implemented to minimize the congestion in prisons. That came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight, it has been observed that more tourists are using trains to travel around the country. Currently, more tourists arrive in the island. The train operation is announced in Sinhala in railway stations. Therefore, foreigners are facing hardships due to this reason. They pointed out that if the announcements are made in English, it will be easier for them. This is for the attention of the General Manager of Railways. That was Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Headlines of the World News. Biden urges Israel to protect Rafah civilians. Farmers protest. Delhi turns into fortress as thousands march to India capital. Israel Gaza, Palestinians sheltering in Rafah fear impending offensive. U.S. President Joe Biden has said an Israeli offensive in Rafah should not proceed without a credible plan for ensuring the safety of more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering there. He said many displaced people in the southern Gazan city were exposed and vulnerable and needed to be protected. A Palestinian doctor in Rafah told the BBC people there were living in fear. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk says any assault would be terrifying and many civilians will likely be killed. Thousands of protesting farmers are marching from neighboring states to India's capital Delhi to seek assured prices for their crops in 2020. Farmers had camped at the Delhi borders protesting against controversial agricultural reforms. The year-long protest, in which dozens died, was called off after the government agreed to repeal the laws. Now the farmers have hit the streets again, saying their key demands still haven't been fulfilled. Police in Delhi have sealed the borders on 3 sides of the city in an attempt to avoid a repeat of 2020, when protesting farmers hunkered down for months, blocking national highways that connect the capital to its neighboring states. A Palestinian doctor in Rafah has said people are terrified about the prospect of an Israeli ground offensive in Gaza's southernmost city after a night of some of the worst airstrikes he has experienced since arriving there. In a series of messages sent to the BBC on Monday, Dr. Ahmed Aboubaid described the airstrikes as incessant and everywhere. The most popular question on people's minds is, where can we go? He said. Last week, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced he had ordered troops to prepare to expand its ground operation to Rafah. And to end the world news, the headlines again. Biden urges Israel to protect Rafah civilians. Farmers protest. Delhi turns into fortress as thousands march to Indian capital. Israel Gaza, Palestinians sheltering in Rafah fear impending offensive. That came to you in the World News. Moving on to development news, a discussion was held under the patronage of State Minister Shehan Semasinghe regarding the pure drinking water project constructed at the Maha Kanderava Vawa in Anuradhapura. It is hoped to complete the project speedily. That was development news.
Moving on with sports news.
And in sports news, South African team scored 220 runs for 6 wickets in their first innings of the second test match played against New Zealand in Hamilton today at the close of the day. That was sports news.
Go ekak thiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු වීර හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
And on the business news, the EU-Sri Lanka Working Group on Trade and Economic Cooperation was organized by the Department of Commerce and was held recently virtually with the participation of high-level delegates from the two sides. The two sides engaged in productive deliberations to enhance bilateral trade ties between the EU and Sri Lanka. That was business news.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekak thiyana youth එකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු වීර හැබැයි කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
And on economic news, COIL successfully hosted the annual Diplomats Evening on 25th February at Hilton Blue Colombo, marking another milestone in furthering global marketplaces for Sri Lanka's economic resurgence. With a commitment to fostering equitable growth, this exclusive event aimed to fortify the local employee base through foreign investments obtained via diplomatic relations. That was economic news.
Weather report.
And finally, we take a look at the weather report. Several spells of showers will occur in eastern and Uva provinces and in Polonnaruwa, Matale and Nuwara Eliya districts. A few showers may occur in Hambantota district. Showers or thunder showers may occur at a few places in western and Sabaragamu provinces and in Galle and Matara districts after 2 p.m. Fairly strong winds, about 30 to 40 km per hour, can be expected at times in eastern slopes of the central hills and in northern, north-central, northwestern, Uva and eastern provinces and in the Hambantota district. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in western and Sabaragamu provinces and in the Galle and Matara districts during the morning. That was the weather report. And to conclude this bulletin of news, the headlines again. The presidential election will be held within the mandated period. Health services are being carried out without hindrance despite the ongoing strike. Leader of the Ilangai Tamil Arusu Katchi says that they will take the final decision regarding supporting a presidential candidate. A children's hospital and a national hospital will be constructed in Biagama. No breeze, more heat in Sri Lanka. And in news overseas, Biden urges Israel to protect Rafah civilians. With that, we conclude this bulletin of news from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. With the time reading 30 minutes down 1, I hand over to my friend and colleague Victor Raj.